And I think to myself, what a beautiful world. Skies are blue and the clouds are white. This song is a true testament that we do indeed live in a magnificently beautiful world. This earth we live on is marked with lots of beauty, both on land, in water, as well as in space. If you look closely, you'll discover some very cool things in unlikely places. Some of these places, though, can be haunted, dangerous, as well as deadly. We have trains, planes, cars, and so many more. You won't believe what they found in the middle of nowhere. Before we get to it, be sure to click the subscribe button and click the notification bell for more amazing content. Let's begin. Chicken Church. This unusual structure is found in the middle of the jungle on the island of Java, near the Hindu temple and the Buddhist temple. Believe it or not, the building known as the Chicken Church was not supposed to be a church. Deep in the Indonesian jungle lies an abandoned church that looks like a giant chicken. We doubt that was the intention of the builder. Looks aren't everything though. This likeness is what attracts many visitors each year. Buddhists, Muslims and Christians alike come here to worship in their way. Nowadays the Chicken Church floors are decorated with jewel tiles, ceilings are decorated with clouds, while walls are filled with scenes from local mythology. Therein there are 12 dedicated prayer rooms and early birds can watch the sunrise from its crown. In the bird's posterior there's a cafe and eggs are for sure on the menu. The building was never really finished after the owner ran out of money. It's rumoured to be haunted by Indonesian folklore that said people still come over to check it out. Pizzeria on top of a volcano. Rising 2,800 feet above sea level, Pacaya volcano overlooks several villages in Guatemala, and since 1965, when it became active again, Pacaya has become a magnet for tourists, and in 2019 it became the first pizza place in the country and the first on Earth to use lava caves as ovens. Pizza Pacaya's founder, David Garcia, became fascinated by the volcano in 2010 when it exploded magnificently, and instead of running away, Garcia decided to stick around. He saw some tourists roasting marshmallows on the lava. This is how the idea began, and for a year he baked pies for his friends in the cave-like structures. In 2019, his hobby became a business. He hikes often to the top of the volcano, carrying a lot of ingredients and equipment on his back to meet tourists who've made reservations. He has a whole lot of toppings that include salami, pepperoni, chorizo, as well as vegetables, onions and peppers. The works. His pizza uses previously kneaded dough and bakes for about 14 minutes. When he cooks it on top of the hot lava, the process only takes a few minutes, since the magma can reach up to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. Spooky sea forts. The Maunsell Army Fort and the Thames Estuary are a decaying reminder of World War II when it was dark and gloomy. During the war, London's ports were vulnerable to bombings in the air and at sea. The answer lay in building forts at sea so that foreign planes and boats could be destroyed before reaching land. They were built on land, then translocated to the water homes and designed by Guy Maunsell, a British civil engineer. The anti-aircraft forts were constructed in 1942, with each fort having 7 stilted buildings surrounding a central command tower, and when operational catwalks connected the buildings, access for soldiers to the forts was via an entrance at the base of the building. Parts of the ladders that the men used are still visible today, but are in very poor condition. Trying to access these forts is a hazard after their successful use in World War II. They were decommissioned in the 1950s. One fort was in extremely bad shape after being hit by a ship and was dismantled in 1959 to 1960. In the 60s and 70s, the forts were taken over as pirate radio stations. Doomsday Bunker City. This former army base that consisted of 475 private military bases built of concrete and steel bunkers is now repurposed and affordably priced and ready to provide life-saving shelter. The Black Hills Army Base was built by the Army Corps engineers as a fortress to store bombs and ammunition from 1942 to 1967, when the entire army base was completely retired. Vivos now owns the property and the bunkers. This place is located near the Black Hills area of South Dakota. When the base was retired in 1967, it was used as a cattle ranch and has been repurposed as the biggest private shelter community on Earth for as many as 5,000 people to survive virtually any catastrophic event, as well as the aftermath. Sounds like a party. Each bunker is 80 by 26.5 feet and can accommodate 24 people with food, water, fuel and supplies for more than a year. A 99-year lease on a bunker costs $1,000 a year, plus $25,000 deposit that you need to pay up front. It's spread across approximately 18 square miles, The off-grid areas are surrounded by a fence and reached by a road or a nearby municipal airport. It's the perfect place in case there's a zombie apocalypse. Creepy car cemetery. Up to 100 cars in various conditions were discovered cascading down the inside of a cave in Cardigan, Wales. A mountain of abandoned cars in the 70s was found 200 feet down an abandoned slate mine. The waterfall formation can be found lit up by a beam of light, and there are hundreds of cars on top of each other. The cave is known as the Cavern of Lost Souls. Explorers made a treacherous journey through the darkness in dangerous conditions and were stunned to find a car graveyard that closed in 1960. The mine opened up around 1836 and closed up around 1960, and it's been abandoned since then. These images are from the lost souls of abandoned cars and are still untouched since they were left there. No one knows how the cars got there in the first place. This mountain of cars and scrap metal rises over 100 feet below the lake surface. Some cars lay hidden there, silently decaying. There's something so surreal about this exploration. It's totally dark, slippery, and very dangerous. Deserted California beach. This community is so small because of the rising Salton Sea that drowned a big part of the trailer community, and it never recovered. Welcome to Bombay Beach in Imperial County, California. It's the lowest community in California, located 223 feet below sea level. This area is quite dangerous for those living around here. Bombay Beach, as well as others located east of here, deal with rising and falling water levels, and a large section of this area has been abandoned. Now it's either you sit in the water or get stuck in the mud. It was designed to be the California version of the French Riviera, and before it was destroyed by the Salton Sea, Bombay Beach was meant to be a playground for rich vacationers in the 40s and 50s. It even stayed as a popular getaway until the 1980s, until the increasing salinity of the sea became too much and drove the residents and business owners away from the area. It was rendered a ghost town. It once hosted the crew of Anthony Bourdain's No Reservation for the Travel Channel, and was also the filming location for the fictional TV movie The Big One, the Great Los Angeles Earthquake. Abandoned Fairy Tale Village. One of the most beautiful parts of northwest Turkey is a deep valley that's covered with dense pine forest and blessed with thermal springs, as well as rows upon rows of identical castle-like chateaux. But when you look a little closer, something is off. The roads between them are unfinished and there's debris everywhere. There's no soul in sight. It's a fairy tale ghost town that started as an ambitious and luxurious development project that fell victim to mismanagement and global financial ruin. The ghost town is located a few miles from the historic town of Medunu. By the early 2000s, Medunu and its thermal springs had attracted property developers, and Burj Al Babus was born, a location of luxurious holiday homes catering for wealthy clients. There would be a Turkish bath, a shopping and entertainment center. The future of the 300 chateaux close to each other is uncertain, and the project has been a cautionary tale for developers. Turkish officials have even suggested that the town be made a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Secret presidential subway station. There are secrets under our feet. Above as well as under in New York, one capsule that remains out of reach is Track 61, which at one end is found behind a locked door on 49th Street. The infamous Track 61 is still in use as a secret escape train for presidents that are visiting the city. The station is not much to look at, but there's a unique antique train car parked in the hidden powerhouse. Track 61 is located beneath the Waldorf-Astoria New York Hotel, beneath an underground storage northeast of the Grand Central Terminal and as part of that terminal complex. The earliest use of the track was during the tenure of Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had his car transported to the station. He's also have rumored to have entered and exited through the station. Track 61 is famous for the comings and goings of many American presidents. From military to celebrity, many more are said to have used the track, but given the amount of secrecy involved, all are hard to confirm. The unmarked brass door leading to the station proves that someone important is still using the track. Ghost Town of Fire. This place boosted 14 active coal mines and 2,500 residents in the early 20th century. By the 1960s, its boom time heyday had passed and most of the mines were abandoned, but over 1,000 people still called it home until a coal mine fire started below. When the coal mine fire began, residents thought it would die down, but the coal mine Centralia fire is still burning 60 years later. In 1962, a fire began in a landfill and spread to the tunnels that miners had dug thousands of feet below the surface. Competing theories exist on how the Centralia fires began, said that they sparked a much bigger fire beneath the town. Despite repeated attempts to put off the flames, the fire still burns to this day and releases poisonous smoke into the air. The ground is under threat of collapsing any time. The mines that define Centralia for all those years are also so many mines underneath that could be fueling the fires. Deadliest garden in the world. An English duchess created this garden and only planted poisonous plants, and in the garden there were about 100 legendary killers. More gardens have been planted in that area, but the first two were down in 1750. By 1950 the garden had closed. The Duchess came by an overgrown, neglected section and decided to restore it into a new, modern garden. The garden was opened in 2005 and the Duchess shied away from planting healing medicinal plants and instead opted for poisonous plants. Also in the garden you'll find narcotics such as opium, cannabis, magic mushrooms and tobacco. Tour guides showcase the plants while keeping the guests away from them, warning them of imminent danger. Guests are not to touch or smell any of the plants since they can kill. The danger posed by the plants is very real. Some plants are caged and the gates to the garden are locked in the evenings and there's a guard there at all times. Trash at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Victor Vescoffo went down 7 miles below into the Pacific Ocean and discovered the Mariana Trench. The American explorer found plastic trash at the base of the seaflow after breaking the record with his 7-mile deep dive. It's the third time that humans have reached such depths. The first time happened in 1960 by the US Navy Lieutenant Dan Walsh and Swiss engineer Jack Picoult. Half a century later, movie director James Cameron made the dive in 2012. He spent 4 hours exploring the bottom of the trench that was able to withhold the great pressure of the deep. He found sea creatures as well as a plastic bag and candy wrappers. The latest dive that got to 35,849 feet is the deepest, making Victor the new record holder. Between Hawaii and the Philippines sits the Mariana Trench, the deepest spot in the ocean. It has a maximum depth of almost 7 miles. To give you some perspective, if you put Mount Everest inside, its peak would still be 7,000 feet below sea level. Winchester Haunted House. Everyone appreciates a perfect ghost story, and the Winchester Haunted House is one for the books. It was even made into a movie in 2018. Despite the lovely appearance, this massive California house is alive with mystery and ghosts, and the most famous story is that Mrs. Winchester was being haunted by the spirits of those killed by the Winchester rifle, which her late husband's company had invented. Overcome by grief over her husband's death, the widow sought out a medium that could commune with the dead. Through the medium, the husband told his widow that the tragedies were a result of the blood money they had made with the Winchester rifles, and the vengeful ghosts would seek her out, and that to protect herself she must build a home for the spirits who had fallen from the rifle. Starting in 1986, Winchester oversaw the construction of a Victorian mansion in San Jose, California. The Church of Ghosts. You can't miss this in the tiny town of Vukovar in the Czech Republic. This long-abandoned building that's filled with eerie white figures. The church is packed with ghost-like figures that sit solemnly in the pews, altar and doorways. This church was consecrated in 1382, and the locals thought that the building was haunted. The congregation started holding mass outside. It was abandoned in 1968 after the roof collapsed. In 2014, a professor of fine arts in West Bohemia asked the students to find a church for an art installation. Jacob Adrava used his classmates as models and covered them in sheets and created plasticine models. Statues represent German Bohemian, an ethnic group that used to live in the area and was expelled from the Czech Republic in World War II. Such a creative way to make social commentary on the region's history. Do you believe in ghosts, or is it just a very unique art idea? Mystery Jet. This is neither an airport nor an airplane yard. This abandoned 737 sits in an abandoned field near some limestone quarry. What's crazy is that no one knows how it got there. With its size, you'd think someone would care to notice the arrival of a Boeing 737, but no, looks like everyone here is just minding their own business. It's located near the southern coast in Bali, and maybe it was purchased and reassembled where it currently stands, but the weird thing is no one saw it arrive. Some locals believe it was meant to be converted into a high-end restaurant, but the owner ran out of money and left it to rust. The vessel is locked in a gate where it sits on private land, and it's protected by a security guard, and if you want to get in you have to pay a fee. The plane is a tourist attraction, and tourists come out looking to visit its inside. Turns out it's not the only abandoned plane that's a tourist attraction on the Indonesian island. 5 miles away there's another abandoned 737 that's next to a donut shop. Tower trapped in a lake. An abandoned church tower in the middle of this mountain lake is what Hollywood movies and classic novels are made of. Church-built towers that emerge from the surface of man-made lakes are a little unusual. Entire towns and villages were, however, destroyed, and today their remains lie at the bottom of artificial lakes. Lake Vischer is an artificial lake that's located in northern Italy near the borders of Switzerland and Austria. The lake was formed 60 years ago, although the planning started much earlier in the 1920s. Streets, houses and buildings that were occupied by people, sometimes during the construction of dams and such structures suitable for such situations. Some of the towns and villages must be flooded. Approximately 12 hectares of land were destroyed and 163 houses submerged. Today, the upper part of the tower that's commonly seen is there. It's the only remainder of the town. These towers were the highest structures in medieval Europe. They are all that's left of the submerged towns. Such an array of strange things in the middle of nowhere. There's more where that came from. Like and subscribe.